Step into the world of The Brady Bunch, a TV show loved by many in the 1960s. Despite not having top ratings at first, it quickly became a hit.
Me too. I'm really looking forward to Saturday night, Dad. I hate to say goodbye too. Bye.
When you come back to Earth, would you please go tell the boys to come in and straighten up their room?
Yeah.
People adored Marcia, played by Maureen McCormick, for her beauty and charm. She played the perfect girl, but also showed a bit of rebellion, which fans enjoyed. The show told the story of the Brady family, a mix of parents, step-siblings, and everyday problems. Viewers could relate to their struggles, like dealing with family and work. The director, Lloyd Schwartz, did a great job making the show feel real. After 5 seasons, the show ended in 1974, but left a lasting impact. People still loved the Brady family and the funny, relatable stories they shared. The Brady Bunch was a super popular show, and Marcia Brady was everyone's favorite. She was like the big sister we all wished we had, with her good girl charm. Maureen McCormick, who played Marcia, did a great job making her seem relatable to young girls across America. But while everything looked smooth on the show, there were some interesting things happening behind the scenes. Maureen was just 13 when she started playing Marcia, and by the time the show ended, she was 18. Growing up on set made it tough for her to keep up with the role as she got older. She felt like the stories were getting stale, and the Brady kids weren't growing up like real people do. Maureen wrote in her book that she wanted more mature scripts, showing the kids dealing with real-life stuff like relationships or acting out, just like any other teenagers. Playing a character so well can be tricky. You become so attached to them that people start seeing you as that character in real life. It's like how Emilia Clarke is forever known as Daenerys from Game of Thrones, or Allison Hannigan as Willow from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's a mix of both good and bad because while you entertain people, it's hard for them to see you as anyone else. In the same way, Maureen started to fall into that gap. As she kept playing the good girl version of Marcia, she became more afraid of being typecast. People mostly saw her as Marcia Brady, the girl who had become America's sweetheart in many ways. She gave a great example of this in her autobiography. After the end of The Brady Bunch in 1974, she started looking for new things to do and parts to play. Finally, she saw a chance to be the lead in Midnight Express, a crime drama based on the true story of American Bill Hayes, been caught trying to leave Turkey with drugs on them. She would say that she had been given the part of Susan, Bill's lover. Sue was a complicated person, and Maureen thought that playing her would be the perfect way to step out of Marcia's shade and show everyone that she was a flexible and capable actor in her own right. That's why she seized the chance. She would talk about the experience and say that the interviews had gone great. She did well on the first reading, and directors even called her back. The cast of Midnight Express was full of big names, and the crew, which included director Alan Parker and author Oliver Stone, was even better. That's why this would be a great job for a young actor who wants to make a name for herself. What made things hard for her was that the part was taken away from her almost at the last minute. It got even worse when her agency told her that she had lost the part because the crew didn't think she was right for it. People couldn't believe that Maureen was now playing the part of Marcia Brady in a dark crime movie with adult themes. They thought it was the same characterization. In the end, the makers cast Irene Miracle, who is also an up-and-coming performer. What happened next was so good that Irene was nominated for a Golden Globe for her role as Susan. Maureen must have been really upset by everything. I don't mean to be rude to Irene, but Maureen would have probably kept thinking about what her career could have been like if she had been cast as Susan in the movie. She blamed Marcia and the creators of The Brady Bunch for her failure to get the part in the end. Things got so bad that she wrote in her autobiography that she hated Marcia and wished she hadn't played the part for so long. There are times when I can see why she's mad. Midnight Express could have been a chance that changed her life. But because of her type, she missed out on the part of a lifetime. Say goodbye to being a good girl. What was interesting about Maureen's problems with her character was that she wasn't the only one. A lot of the other actors, especially the ones who played the Brady kids, agreed that the stories could have been changed to show that the kids were getting older and going through new things. Based on what Maureen wrote in her autobiography, everyone thought things could be better. There were too many repeats of stories about kids, which may have been one reason why the show started to lose its spark near the end. The young cast members wanted things to change, so they went to the showrunners and asked for a more lively and interesting script with lots of different plots for each of them. Marcia wanted her stories to be about things like Mike and Carol deciding to try swinging in their relationship, the kids having boy-girl relationships with other people, and the kids generally going through all the signs of puberty. But the showrunners would say no to their demands, and if you think about it, you can see why they feel that way. If you have a good show that a lot of people like, changing something might ruin the whole thing. Now, some viewers might not like where their favorite characters go, so they might switch to different shows. People often say, "Don't fix what ain't broken." It's important to remember that the show wasn't doing well in the numbers, so there wasn't much room for mistake. The people in charge of the show became even less likely to make any changes. Even though their requests were turned down, Maureen did not take it lying down. She chose to make a stand in some way, and in the end, she found the right thing. Eve Plum, who played Jan, Marcia's younger sister, and Maureen agreed that they would both show up to the set wearing only their clothes and nothing else. The act said more than it did. Since the show wouldn't let the women be themselves and change their lines, they changed what they were wearing and put it all out there for the people to see. Maureen and Eve would show up to set every week for a few weeks while episodes were being filmed wearing nothing but tops or dresses. The people there could see it clearly. It was their way of standing up and showing that they would be able to be heard no matter what. Director Lloyd Schwartz finally noticed what Maureen and Eve were doing, even though no one noticed their strange choice of clothes for weeks. They did something wrong, so he pulled them away and told them it wasn't okay to do that on the set. Some stories say that Schwartz would even go to great steps to make sure that Maureen and Eve behaved. For example, before shooting, he would put his hand on their backs to feel the straps of their bras, just to be sure. Of course, that kind of behavior, especially toward girls who weren't old enough, would be seen as wrong now. And thank goodness things have changed. After some back and forth, Maureen and Eve agreed to stop acting silly and keep shooting while wearing the right clothes. Even though their pranks were short, they thought it would be worth it. The girls thought that at the very least, changing their clothes would show that they had grown up and weren't just the spoiled brats that their roles were made out to be. There's no way to know for sure if this whole plan worked, but the girls made a statement as best they could. What was funny was that Maureen and Eve weren't the only ones on the show who had chosen to act out, because they felt like they had grown up. Remember how I said the young actors were excited to show how much they had grown? It seemed like everyone had at least one way to do that. What Maureen wrote in her autobiography was about how Barry Williams, who played Greg, the oldest Brady boy, would often bring cigarettes to the set of the Brady Bunch and smoke them. It was a good thing that Susan Olsen, who played Cindy Brady, went for a drink while the group was shooting at a Cincinnati theme park. Susan, who was only 8 years old when the show started, had never drunk anything in her life. But she chose to join in, either because she was feeling horny or because she wanted to show support for her co-stars. I don't know about you, but that seems a little risky to me. Even with all of their pranks, the young cast members weren't able to get the showrunners and writers to change the plots. This may have been a bad choice in more than one way. Many of those cast members were stuck in the parts they played on the Brady Bunch, and they could never really get away from the characters they played. There are more interesting facts about the Brady Bunch. Remember how I said there was a lot going on behind the scenes of the show? Don't worry, it wasn't a joke. It's possible that millions of people loved this show, but they had some juicy secrets that should have been shared. Now let's talk about how the Brady Bunch came to be. Almost every TV show starts with an idea, which could come from a book, the maker's views on life, or even a previous work. To make the Brady Bunch, they used a fact as their motivation. There are rumors that the show's creator, Sherwood Schwartz, got the idea for it from a story in the Los Angeles Times. According to the story, hugely 3% of marriages in 1965 included children from previous marriages. This means that a lot of people in the US had been divorced before they got married. Schwartz thought this number was interesting, so he chose to make things more interesting by putting together a bunch of kids from 2 different relationships. Schwartz finally took that idea to ABC Studios and pitched it as a show called Yours, Mine, and Ours. For some reason, the network didn't like it. But in 1968, George C. Scott and Lucille Ball would star in a movie with the same name. The 1968 movie was about a widower named Frank Beardsley who has 10 kids. Henry Fonda played Frank. Frank had fallen in love with Helen, played by Lucille, who already had 8 kids of her own. Now they both had to deal with the challenges of starting a big, strange family. After the success of Yours, Mine, and Ours, ABC Studios execs thought that a show about a big family might also be a hit. They gave Schwartz's plan the go-ahead and gave it the name The Brady Bunch. Strange career route of Susan Olsen. As I already said, one problem with being so good at one part as an actor is that it's easy to become typecast and lose your own identity in the role that made you famous. Even though we were all interested in Maureen McCormick and her part as Marcia Brady, she was by no means the only one going through these tough times. It looks like Susan Olsen, who played Cindy Brady, had the same problems. And when the Brady Bunch ended, Susan, like the rest of the group, went out and looked for other parts she could play. It was just that she wasn't having much fun figuring out how to work in the movie business. Another reason is that Cindy wasn't a big name in movies yet, and even people who did know her found it hard, if not impossible, to get rid of the picture of the baby-faced Cindy Brady. Because of this, Susan had to go back to her normal life. Even though she was in a few other shows, The Brady Bunch was the most famous thing she worked on. News sources say that Susan even worked in the adult film business, but not as a performer. The person who lived with her was into adult movies, and she had a sound generator in her room. The sounds of a rocket were made on Susan's keyboard because her friend needed them for a movie that was coming out soon. She was then given credit for a sound effect part in an adult movie called Love Probe from a Warm Planet. She allegedly made $50 for her work on the independent adult movie, which she said she had named herself. In a way, this makes Susan the cast member who most strongly disagreed with the Brady Bunch's emphasis on always being spotless. The other girls may have gone out of their way to show they didn't like something on set, but Susan kind of lived the adult life, has trouble getting viewers. It would be an insult to say that the Brady Bunch was an important TV show. To make things even more interesting, there seemed to be a big gap between how popular the show was and how well it did in the numbers. But here's the thing. If you asked a lot of TV fans from the 1970s to name their best show, most of them would say The Brady Bunch. As kids, most people liked the show for all the reasons already mentioned, plus some more. In fact, Sherwood Schwartz, who created the show, once said that when it was at its peak in fame, he got letters from kids who said they were going to run away from their families and live with the Bradys. It was that serious. You can still watch The Brady Bunch today. Its catchy intro and opening sequence are still very popular and have been used as inspiration for other popular sitcoms of the time. For my family, that's how they all became the Brady Bunch. The show was so popular that it led to a few spin-offs, such as The Brady Brides, The Brady Bunch Hour, and a number of made-for-TV movies. Even though The Brady Bunch was a huge hit, it never really broke through in the ratings or at the box office. In fact, the show never made it into Nielsen's top 30 list of the most popular TV shows during its 5-year run. The highest it ever got was 31, which it didn't reach until the 3rd season. If you look at why The Brady Bunch kept losing viewers, it's easy to see why fans loved the show so much. There were a lot of other great shows on at the same time as this one, like Here's Lucy, Gunsmoke, and others. Because of this, it was hard for this show to get to the top of the ratings. Still, the numbers never really showed how popular The Brady Bunch was, and Schwartz himself would say that the show was a fan choice. The whole mess only showed how interesting it can be when a show's numbers don't match up with how popular it really is. The Brady Bunch ran for 5 seasons during a time when shows were being pulled all the time. It's likely that the numbers didn't really show how popular the show was. Who is Robert Reed? Besides Marcia, one of the most loved characters on the Brady Bunch was Mike Brady, the dad. For many, the figure was the ideal American dad because he was tough, strong, had strong morals, and had a lovely family. A lot of Mike's personality came from the great playing of Robert Reed, who played him. Robert Reed did have an interesting secret, though. He was gay, even though he played a straight, married man on TV. There was no doubt that Robert was the most skilled actor on the set of The Brady Bunch. Before the show, he had made a name for himself in the movie business, starring in both hit movies and Broadway shows. At that time, people weren't always as accepting of gay people as they are now. He was afraid that his job would be wrecked if people found out he was gay, so he spent most of his life hiding his sexuality. But the choice did have an effect on him. He was called a snob who yelled at the show's team members all the time and was difficult to work with. It's easy to see why he would do that. Having to hide such a big part of your life can be hard, and you can only think how stressed he must have been. Some of the players on the Brady Bunch did know, though, that he was gay. In 2011, Florence Henderson talked about her book, Life is Not a Stage, and said that she knew Robert had been gay behind her back. Henderson played Robert's real-life wife, Carol. Robert's secret didn't come out until after he died in 1992. By that time, some of his co-stars were more comfortable talking about how they knew he was gay. They just chose to keep it quiet to respect his privacy. It was a touchy topic, for sure. If people had known at the time that he was gay, they probably wouldn't have watched the show at all. Still, it must have been hard to keep such a secret from everyone. You can only understand how much of an impact The Brady Bunch had on TV show fans all over the world. It was one of the most famous comedies of all time. What do you think? Should the show's creators have changed the plot to show how the kids grew? Was Robert Reed right to hide the fact that he was gay? Please tell me what you think about this show in the space below. See you next time.